Have you ever been somewhere that makes your skin crawl without knowing why? Picture this, an old house seemingly abandoned, nestled in the heart of nowhere. On my arrival, a shiver ran up my spine, as if the very air was saturated with a ghostly presence. The wind whistled through the skeletal trees, its chilling tune echoing the house's eerie silence. The house itself was a relic of a bygone era, its once grandeur now faded into obscurity. It was as though time had stopped, and the house, like a forgotten ghost, was trapped in its own haunting past. A sense of foreboding hung heavily in the air, as if the house was holding its breath, waiting for something, or someone. The stark moonlight cast long menacing shadows that danced around the house, adding to the unsettling atmosphere. The silence was deafening, broken only by the occasional rustling of leaves, whispering tales of forgotten lore. The house stood there, quiet, dark and unwelcoming, yet I had to enter. As I stepped inside, it felt as if the house itself was alive, watching me. A chill ran down my spine, the kind that comes from being watched by unseen eyes. The stillness was eerie, the silence broken only by the soft echo of my footsteps against the creaking floorboards. The air was heavy, filled with the scent of dust and decay, a clear sign that the house had been untouched for years. As I ventured further, my eyes took in the sight of the old furniture, draped in sheets of dust, their once vibrant colors faded into obscurity. The wallpaper was peeling off the walls, revealing the bare wooden structure beneath. The dim lighting cast long, ghostly shadows that danced on the walls, adding to the uncanny atmosphere of the house. Despite the unsettling aura, there was something captivating about the house. It was as if it held secrets, stories that were yet to be uncovered. But with every step I took, the feeling of being watched grew stronger. It wasn't just the house that was alive, there was something else, something lurking in the shadows. The temperature seemed to drop with each room I entered, the chill seeping into my bones. A sense of dread washed over me as the realization hit. I wasn't alone, there was a presence, a feeling of something lurking just out of sight. It was as if the shadows themselves were alive, shifting and moving in the corners of my eyes. I could hear it, a soft whisper that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. It was like a breath against my ear, the words unintelligible but the intent clear. It was watching me, studying me, its unseen eyes following my every move. The air seemed to grow denser, the shadows darker, the silence more profound. I could feel it, a presence that wasn't human hiding in the shadows, watching my every move. The unseen presence was there, lurking in the darkness, a silent observer in this house of secrets. It was clear now, I was not alone in the house, and whatever was there with me, it wasn't keen on remaining unseen for much longer. As night fell, the house seemed to change. The shadows grew longer, the silence deeper. The transition from day to night was far from subtle. As the last slivers of sunlight vanished, the house started to reveal its true nature. It was as if the building itself was awakening from a long slumber. The once comforting walls now felt oppressive, closing in with a claustrophobic intensity. The rooms previously bathed in warm, inviting light were now shrouded in an unsettling darkness that seemed to swallow every corner, every crevice. The silence of the house was no longer a peaceful quietude. It was a heavy, suffocating silence that was occasionally punctuated by strange, inexplicable noises. The faint rustling of papers from a room where no wind blew, the quiet creaking of the wooden floors when no one was walking, the soft clattering of utensils from the empty kitchen. Each sound was a chilling reminder of my solitude, yet the unnerving suspicion of not being alone. The cold drafts that swept through the house were more than just drafts. They were icy fingers that brushed against my skin, sending shivers down my spine. They seemed to appear from nowhere, meandering through the hallways, whispering tales of dread and despair. The chill was not merely physical, but it was a cold fear that seeped into my bones, freezing my courage, my hope. And then, there were the shadows. Oh, the shadows. They were not simply the absence of light, but entities in themselves. They seemed to shift and move when I wasn't looking, playing tricks on my terrified mind. I would catch them from the corner of my eye, fleeting figures that disappeared as soon as I turned. They lurked in the periphery of my vision, teasing, taunting, reminding me of the unknown entity that was sharing this house with me. I was trapped in this house, with something that didn't want me there. In the dead of night, I came face to face with the unseen entity. A chill ran down my spine, not from the cold, but from a sudden, inexplicable fear that filled the room. The air around me had become thick, heavy, as if charged with a malevolent energy. I could feel the temperature plummeting, an icy coldness seeping into my bones. It was a cold that didn't just touch the skin, it penetrated deep within, a cold that chilled the soul. I attempted to move, but found myself rooted to the spot, frozen by a terror that was as much physical as it was psychological. My heart pounded in my chest like a drum, each beat echoing in the silence of the room. The silence was deafening, broken only by the sound of my own shallow, ragged breathing. And then I felt it, the unmistakable sensation of being watched. Even though I was alone, or at least I thought I was alone, I could feel eyes on me. Eyes that were not merely observing, but scrutinizing, dissecting, penetrating my very being. It was an invasive feeling, a violation of my privacy that left me feeling exposed, vulnerable. The whispers came next. Soft, barely audible murmurs that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. The words were indecipherable, yet their tone was unmistakable. They were not friendly whispers, nor were they benign. They were sinister, filled with a malice that made my skin crawl. They whispered in my ear, their cold, ethereal breath raising goosebumps along my neck. I was gripped by a terror I could neither explain nor understand, yet was all too real. My senses were heightened, every sound amplified, every shadow a potential threat. I was in the presence of something that was not human, something that was not of this world. I knew then I was not alone, something was here with me. As dawn broke, the house revealed its secrets. The chilling events of the night had painted a haunting picture, but the morning light brought with it a sense of clarity. Hidden in the shadows, obscured by the fear of the unknown, a truth had been lurking, waiting to be discovered. As the pieces of this eerie jigsaw started falling into place, an image began to form. An image not of a monstrous entity, but of a human, trapped in an ethereal form. The house, it appeared, was not merely a house, but a vessel carrying the echoes of a past life, a life that had met an untimely end within these very walls. The entity that had been stalking the shadows was not an unknown beast, but the spirit of the previous owner. A man who had once breathed life into these rooms, his laughter echoing off these walls, his dreams etched into the very foundation of this house. His life had been unexpectedly cut short, leaving his spirit untethered, unable to move on, bound to the very place he had once called home. His presence was not an act of malevolence, but a desperate plea for recognition, an attempt to communicate, to tell his story. He was not a ghost in the traditional sense, but a lost soul looking for release. His actions, seemingly terrifying, were just desperate attempts to reach out, to make his presence known. As this realization dawned, the house seemed less like a haunted nightmare, and more like a tragic tale of a life interrupted. The cold drafts, the eerie noises, the inexplicable movements, they were all cries for help, echoes of a life that once was. The house was not a den of horror, but a monument to a life lost, a testament to the human spirit's struggle to find peace. As the sun rose, the shadows receded, and the spirit, no longer a faceless entity, took form in the light of understanding. The house wasn't haunted by a malicious entity, but by a lost soul trapped in the shadows. The truth had been unraveled, and with it, a sense of sympathy for the spirit replaced the fear. The house was not an object of terror, but a beacon of sorrow, a silent plea from the beyond. In the light of day, I made a decision. I was not going to live in fear anymore. I was not going to let a displaced spirit dictate my life. It was time to take control, to face the unknown and to set things right. I began to research, poring over ancient texts and obscure rituals. I discovered a ceremony to release trapped spirits, to guide them to their final rest. It was risky, sure, but it was a chance I was willing to take. As the sun began to set, I started the ritual. The air around me grew heavy and cold. I could almost feel the spirit's presence growing stronger, but I pressed on, determined to finish what I had started. Then, as quickly as it had begun, it was over. The heaviness lifted, the cold dissipated, I could breathe again, I could feel again. The house no longer felt eerie or unwelcoming. It was just an old house with a story to tell,